Okay, so I need to show you one thing, that is chart of account mapping. Where do you do the chart of account mapping rules and what are the rules that are available? Okay, so now why do we need chart of accounts mapping? Obviously, we understand there can be different chart of accounts in our primary ledger and in our secondary ledger. There can be different chart of accounts from uh, one ledger to another consolidation ledgers. There can be different scenarios why we want to use a chart of account mapping. Okay, so we can create the chart of account mappings. There are two types. One is combination rule. We also call it as your account rule, combination rule or account rule, and we have segment rules. Now how does this works? Now for example, you define a combination rule and you have one chart of account to another chart of accounts. So you have maybe 5 segments here. Which moves to 4 segment chart of accounts or 3 segments chart of accounts. Now this is my combination rule. For each combination you can define what is the source, what is the target, what is the source, what is the target. But this is not practically possible. We cannot do that for all the combinations. It is very difficult for us to do that. So in that case, what we do is usually we write a segment rules. We can write combination rules, but it's not very user friendly. It's not possible. So in segment rules, we have multiple options. If I go inside my segment rules, I can select my source. And target. So you can see here mapping methods. So you have multiple mapping methods. You have copy value from source, use roll-up rules, assign single value. Okay, so now if you, let's say for example in our chart of account 1 and 2, and you write this for each segment. So if you see the rules here, this is for my entity segment. I can choose any method. So I can choose copy value from source. If my entity segment is same in both the chart of accounts and we are using the same value set in both the chart of accounts, I can say copy value from source. That means whatever values that is there in my source chart of accounts, the target chart of accounts is also having my same value set, the same list of values. So I can say copy value from source, and the source segment is company segment. That is one possibility. You can use roll-up rules. So for LOB segment, take the values from source from the department segment and use the roll-up rules. Now roll-up rules can tell you whatever is my target and condition between any department value between 100 to 200 should roll up to this particular target value. Right? So I can write the roll-up rules, how the values will get rolled up. So if you want to do one-on-one mapping, you can do one-on-one mapping as well. Yeah, somebody has some question? Okay, so you can use this roll-up rules to copy the values for whichever value. So all the department values from 100 to 200 will go into 121. Right? Any questions on this roll-up rule and copy value from source? Okay, so the next that we have is assign single value. Not a very good example to use account segment for this type of rule. Usually we do that for a future segment or something. Assign single value is for future value, future segments, always the value is 0000, right? So you can do that, or maybe for cost center. If there you are having a source 3 segment chart of account structure, in target you have 4 segment chart of account structure. How you are going to fill that 4th segment if you don't even have that in the source? So you can give some single value or assign single value or something like that, and you can fill it up accordingly. Right, so you understand what are the rules that you can write to do the chart of account mapping. Any questions on this? Okay, perfect. Okay, now I'm going to go and define our primary ledgers. I will choose the things that we have defined. Currently I'm choosing standard accrual here, but we'll define our own accounting method and we are going to change this. So whatever configuration that we have defined, we'll just choose that particular configuration here and just say save and close. Now once you do that and you create your ledger options and all, you cannot change your chart of accounts, calendar, currency, anything. You cannot change any of this again. Name, yes, you can change the names, but you cannot change any currency, calendar, whatever you have defined. Then we have assign legal entities to your ledger. So you have to assign the legal entities to our ledger. So first thing is you have to select that in the scope. And once you select this, just go on the right and say save and close. This is not a very user-friendly screen, but we just have to manage it by reducing the font size. Okay, so we defined legal entity A2F Bank Limited, I think Apps to Fusion Bank Limited, something, right? Yep. So you attach this particular legal entity here. My voice is audible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you assign your legal entities, then you say specify ledger options, you go inside your ledger options. Is everybody tired already? Too much information for today?
Little bit.
I know this 5 hours training can be tiring.
Yeah, it's not easy to digest so much of stuff in a couple of days.
Right.
Unless you have a good navigational experience, you may find it a bit difficult, but it is very interesting.
Right. Right. Okay, so now this specify ledger options, we have to do this for whatever ledgers that you define. For all the ledgers, this is a mandatory step that you need to perform. So you will give some default values here. So whatever you see here, like currencies, chart of accounts, and calendar, this cannot be changed. And this is like a very, very important step, that is first open period. If you fill this wrongly, it is going to be an issue. So let's say, for example, we are wanting to migrate the data, like 2 years old data, and we give this first open period as today's date, then it is going to be very difficult for us. We have to go and define new ledgers and everything. Once you have saved, the system doesn't allow you to change it. So be very, very careful after deploying the ledger configuration and all. You cannot change this, whatever is the first open period. So we call this as a golden period and all. Then you give your retained earnings account here. Now can you see I had to fill up all this information manually here. So at the structure instance level, I can define some defaults. If I would have given some defaults there, then I wouldn't need to fill all this information. Like for example, LOB, I can give a default, cost center and intercompany, I can give 000 as default, and you can replace it or change it later on. If you don't give any default, all of the segments you need to fill up manually. Why it is taking so much time to save?
Is it creating the queue?
No, not really. So cube will be created once we do the ledger, when we deploy the ledger. At that point it will create, check all the things, deploy all the cube, publish all the values to the cube and everything. So there are multiple ways of navigation. I can just go from the search and navigate around it. Yeah, it is safe now. Okay, so you give a default language, you give a default retaining earnings account, and you can see this accounting method, which we'll change separately later on. And so default period end rate, period average rate, which is all these options are, I'm not explaining in detail. So some of these options are default suspense, rounding account that we discussed for journal balancing. Do you want to enable suspense account? For subledger journals and journal entries, and you want to auto reversal criteria set, enable intercompany accounting. You want to enable the intercompany accounting, you can enable that. Now this is an average balance cube checkbox. If you don't enable this at this point, system will never ask you again to enable this. You do not get an option to enable it in future stages. So once while defining this ledger configuration, if you have enabled it, then it is fine. If you forget it, then you have to define a new ledger, and then only you will get this option.
Ashish, like if you go, how do you go back to the screen? Like if I need to say, like I need to have the subledger periods closed before I close this particular primary ledger period, like there's a checkbox, right? How do I go back to the screen once the primary ledger is created?
No, sorry, come again.
If you go up like this checkbox, right? Like if you come down, yeah, right there. Try and prevent generally like the period closure when open subledger periods exist. If only this option was not available before, it was created only in between in 19 or 20 release. If we went live before that and this checkbox is given later on, how would I go back and update the primary ledger? When I go search for
you can go and update that later on.
Okay. When I say manage primary ledgers, when I'm searching in my system, it does not let me go and update it. That's what
No, you just need to go. Did you go inside specify ledger options?
Yes, I did pick up my primary ledger. I'm working on another laptop. I'm just checking the other things. Okay. I'll try again.
Yeah, you just go inside. Yeah, sure. Okay, so you can enable basic options, any sequencing that you need or anything. I'm not going to enable anything else here. So I'll just say save and close. Then I will assign the balancing segment values to my legal entity. Okay, so this is the place where you can define your secondary ledgers as well. I'm not currently defining any secondary ledgers. Now in this section, I can go and say my secondary ledger. So you always define your secondary ledgers on top of your PLs. So you have your PL, A2F, bank, PL, chart of accounts, accounting calendar, currency, and accounting method. And you have your secondary ledger, so you can define the secondary ledger name, description. What is the chart of accounts for a secondary ledger? You will have accounting calendar, currency, accounting method, and what is the conversion level. So do you have journal level, balance level, or adjustment only level? You can decide that. So currently I'm not saving this. So you can define your secondary ledgers, and you can go inside the primary to secondary ledger mapping. So when you go and say primary to secondary ledger mapping, you can define, give your chart of account mapping if you have a different chart of accounts and all, and what all sources and categories that needs to be transferred to your secondary ledgers. And the specify ledger option is same for secondary ledgers. You have to do that. Similarly for reporting currencies also, you need to just go and define the reporting currencies. So once you have done all this information, you have filled up all the information, you have to go review and submit accounting configuration. So now when we submit this review, this particular accounting configuration, there are a couple of things that would happen. System is going to check whether all the things that we have given in the ledger retained earnings account and all the chart of accounts is deployed, calendar is fine. So it is going to validate the ledger configuration. It is going to create a cube for us. A chart of accounts cube is going to be created. It is also going to create a data access set. I will explain what is a data access set once I submit this. So I've submitted this complete accounting configuration. It will run multiple child processes to create the cube, to validate the ledger, creating data access set and all those things. Once all of that is completed, our ledger would be deployed. Okay, so I was explaining about the data access sets. What is a data access set? We have done all these steps: specify ledger options, assign legal entity, balancing segment value, reporting currencies and all. Now once we deploy the ledger configuration, automatically system is going to create one default data access set for us. We can use that data access set or we can create our custom data access set as well. Now why is it used or where exactly it is used is, so system creates a full data access set for our scenario. Like for example, if we want some restrict the access at the balancing segment value level, we can use this data access set to create our additional security on top of our entity segment. Let's say for example you have certain primary balancing segment value like insurance, any bank or anything, and you only want to give on a specific balancing segment value, you want to just give read-only access. So people cannot post the journals for specific balancing segment value. They can just read the data, they can just go to manage journals, find the journals, run the reports, but they cannot post any data in that particular entity or company. So you can give read-only access for that balancing segment or for that particular ledger also. Whatever, if you have 100 balancing segment values, 100 companies in that ledger, you can give the ledger access, read and write access or read-only access. So you can do both the things. By default, system is going to create a ledger access with read and write. So everything you'll get read and write. By default, system gives you one data access set automatically created. If you want to create a custom one, you can create custom one as well. Any questions on data access set?
Can you show us some samples like in the application so we can see like what possibilities? I will also check my, but like usually it was done in the beginning of the project. I joined after that and I didn't go back, and we just assign the data access set, but we don't get it change once it is defined.
Right. I will show you how you can do it. Okay, so now in this access set, you can have for a full ledger or only for your balancing segment value level. Okay, so I can say full ledger.
The company means for a legal entity, if it's a balancing segment.
Correct, correct. So you have, this data access set is created at a chart of account and calendar combination. Okay, so here you can select ledger or a ledger set, and you can give read and write access or read only access. So you can say data access set read only. So now whichever user has access to general ledger area and they have access to this particular data access set, they can only do read only. They can run the reports, they can check for the journal, manage journals, but they cannot post or create any journals.
And when you assign this data access set to the user, right? Do you need to still run the retrieve LDAP users access or
No,
something?
nothing.
So
Nothing.
immediately can they log in through ADFDA?
Immediately they can.
I had an issue like where when a user called and said he could not run the FRS report, and I looked his access, and his access was, he didn't have the right data access set. One ledger set was missing and it's based on the data access
You
set.
just log out and log in again. If that happens, you can just log out and log in again. You don't need any LDAP or to be synced there.
You don't need to do any other process.
Nothing. Means just close the ADFDA and download it again for the things to refresh.
Okay, thank you.
But you really don't need LDAP because there is no role or anything. You just assign the data access set and just log out and log in. Once it should appear again. Okay, so this is how you can create. If you want to create it for a specific balance segment value, you can choose your ledger. You want to create it for all the values or any specific values, let's say some single value. I can choose a parent value as well here. So I can choose a tree and tree code and all. Let's say I just want to create it for entity number 10, read only access. And I can add one more row, entity number 20, read and write access, and give this data access set to the users. So I can do that as well. So it is at both ledger level, entity level. Right now I'm not creating anything. By default, system creates a ledger level read and write access for me.
Thank you.
Sure. So looks like everything is completed. Load chart of account values, complete accounting configuration, create balance cubes, which is going to publish our chart of account values in the cube. Everything is done. Now let me check if my right. So this is my ledger name, A2F Bank PL. Automatically this is created a full ledger access with read and write. Okay. Now how do you assign the access to users? You go to this manage data access set, this particular task, manage data access for users, and in the section users without data access, or in the users with data, if you want to search for existing access, you have to go inside this users with data access and search here. Click on this plus icon. Data access set. If you want to give it for other roles, you can just say duplicate here. Change the role name and just save and close. So this is how you can give the data access to the users. You can also give the data access using spreadsheet. Just click on this. So this is another ADFDI spreadsheet that you can download. Okay, so in this particular section, now if you want to give multiple rows, you can just say select this rows and say insert. So if you are going to enter any value here, it is going to throw an error. So just say insert multiple rows and then select whatever you want to select here. So I'm going to give access for data access set. Now wherever you see this double dot, this is actually the system list of values. You can double click on this cell and it is going to take you to the system list of values. Right, so if you don't remember the name, you can obviously copy paste, you can do whatever you want, but if you don't remember the name, wherever you see this double dot, you can just double click on that cell and it will take you to the system list of values. And if I write general accountant or general accounting manager, it is going to throw an error because this already exists. You just give the name of the role and then say upload. So row inserted successfully. Other rows are failed because I did not put any data into it. And if you want to check the users with data access, you can go inside with users with data access. And you put in the role here. And search. So you can see whatever data access said, this particular user for this particular role, they have it. And this is like query by example. You can put in the name here on this particular top search section and you can just search for your whatever data access that particular user have. If you want to remove it, you can just go to actions and revoke data access assignment. So you can revoke as well, give it manually, give it from the spreadsheet and all those things. Any questions on this data access? How do you give data access? You know how to create a user, you know how to assign a role. After assigning the roles, you can give the data access like this. So unless and until the user have the data access, they cannot perform any task, even open the periods. So unless and until they have the access, they cannot even open the periods for this particular ledger.